Hi everyone and welcome back to my YouTube channel. So today is December 12th and that means it is the last day of Bookmas. And since it's the last day of Bookmas, I wanted to tell you guys about my 5 stars for the year. Even though it is sort of the middle-ish of the month, I feel like I can be pretty confident in giving you guys this list right now because 5 stars are hard to come by. But even if I get a 5 star later in the month, I'm sure it'll appear in a later video. So it's probably fine. So these are my 13 5 stars for 2024 out of the 112 books I've read. So first we'll start with romance. And I only gave one romance book this year a 5 star, and that is Deluge by Laura Taylor. This is the second book in Taylor's The Elements series. It's an Omegaverse series about it's set in the sci-fi world, and our main characters are, I guess in this world they're like military personnel, but they're really astronauts, and so they are sent off, them and their crew are sent off to check on this station that they have set up on this planet because people at that station have stopped responding and have stopped checking in. So they're sent there to check on what has happened to them, and while they're there, our Omega main character goes into heat, and that's, if you know anything about Omegaverse, you know chaos ensues. And I really love the first one, but every time I reread the series, and I've reread it a lot since I first read it, I think last year. I think I read it at least twice fully last year, and I've reread the first book a lot, and then sometimes I'll reread the entire series, but I always give the second book a 5 star because it's where the relationship between the main characters really starts to explode. You get some exploding in the first book, of course, but I think it's really here where their relationship solidifies, and it's one of my favorite romance books and series ever. So yeah, this definitely 5 star read. Then we'll move from romance to middle grade. So I read Before the Ever After by Jacqueline Woodson, and this won the Coretta Scott King Award for Nonviolent Social Change. And this book is about a young boy whose father plays in the NFL, but his father has started forgetting and has turned very moody, and we come to learn that his father has acquired many concussions, and that has started to affect his personality and his family's daily life. So we're just following this boy as he sees his father, who he's always looked up to, start to change. And it's a really powerful book discussing traumatic head injuries, and I definitely recommend. It's told in verse, so it's a really quick read, and also it's middle grade, so of course it's a very fast read, but it's really just a beautiful story, and seeing how this family and how the young boy's friends really come together in this book to support each other and to support the football player dad. It's a beautiful book, definitely recommend. Next we have manga. This is also a romance technically, but manga, actually it's a manhwa, because I think, yeah, it's a manhwa. This is another Omegaverse book. This is the 6th book, and the Love is an Illusion, and I've read the series a lot, but I just got the physical copy, so when I get the physical copies I read it again, and this is a 5 star. I just love the series. There's some problematic things in it, I know, but I just enjoy it. The series is about an Omega who believes he's an alpha, but it's not, and he goes into heat and chaos ensues. That's the deal. Next, we'll move on to memoir. So I have In the Dream House by Carmen Maria Machado, and this won the Lambda Literary Award. So this, I think, is the only book I gave a 5 star to that's nonfiction, excluding poetry. But this is just if you've read it, you know why this is so transcendent. So this is Carmen Maria Machado's memoir, where she basically is reflecting on a relationship she had that was abusive, but the memoir is way more than that, because she takes deep dives into the history of intimate partner violence, especially in lesbian relationships. And it's just an account of this relationship, but also the story is told, each chapter is framed as being set in this dream house. So it is sort of like this house that contains like all that has happened to her and all these like wonderings. So as the summary says, each chapter is driven by its own narrative trope: the haunted house, erotica, the Bildungsroman, through which Machado holds her story up to the light while also casting a critical eye over legal proceedings, fairy tales, iconic works of film and fiction, and a broad swath of queer history. And the Dream House explodes our ideas about what a memoir can do and be. And I think that is so accurate. This is like nothing I ever read before, and reading it was just, it was an extraordinary experience. I am looking through I've annotated so much of this book. Like, look at this. Like, I have notes on every page, just analysis upon analysis and thoughts upon thoughts. It is a sensational and must-read memoir and piece of literature. Next, we'll move on to short stories. So I have The World Doesn't Require You by Rhian Amilcar Scott. And this is just the most sensational, sensational short story collection. Every story feels so lived in, and every character voice and personality feels so real. The writing style is just second to none. I think it's some of the best writing I've ever read. I constantly found myself just being mind blown with how Rhian is able to put together these stories and create these characters that honestly you hate a lot. You most likely, if you read this, you probably won't like the characters, but that's okay, because you don't need to. You just need to like absorb the story and really sit in the story. Like, liking the characters, really, it don't matter. I don't think it matters here. I found myself often being like, oh my gosh, this character, but I was like, but this story though, this story is all you need. And there's this one story, which is the last story, and it's almost half the book. It's this much of the book. This whole section of the book is one story, and it's told from the point of view of this professor who's gotten himself into trouble. And it is the most insane thing, but it also feels so real. This character feels like such a real person, and the whole section is some of the most brilliant writing I have ever read. Just absolutely, reading it the whole time, I was just in shock that someone was able to write this, because it's just too real. It's too real. But yeah, so this is set in the fictional Cross River, Maryland. The World Doesn't Require You heralds a major unique literary talent. Established by the leaders of America's only successful slave revolt in the mid-19th century, the town still evokes the rhythms of its founding. With lyrical prose and singular dialect, Rhian Amilcar Scott pens a saga that echoes the fables carried down for generations, like the screecher birds who swoop down from their periodic sacrifice, and the water women who lure men to wet deaths. Oh my gosh, this was just so good. Like, I can't recommend it enough. I feel like this is like a read that you're either gonna love it or hate it, because me and my best friend read this together, and while she could admit that the writing was good, like, she despised the characters and could not give it a 5-star because of that, and that's fine. But just know that this is some of the most brilliant writing you'll ever read. And if you don't think so, you're wrong. Okay, and now we'll move on to poetry. So I actually gave a few poetry collections 5 stars. But I gave them all to one author. So I read 3 of Danez Smith's poetry collections this year, and I gave all 3 of them 5 stars. And I have more of their collections that I plan to read, and I'm pretty sure I'm going to give them 5 stars as well. Danez Smith's, their writing is second to none. I said this about Rhian, but in poetry, Danez Smith, like, they can do no wrong in my eyes. They can do no wrong. Every collection was brilliant. Just the way they are able to put together words, the word combinations they make. I I I, I don't. I'm speechless, honestly. Like speechless. I couldn't believe the words that they put together. I'm trying to find one of these word combinations. These are it's just, let's see. You can never find anything when you're looking for it. Um yeah, but it's just an exploration of blackness in America, um pop culture, friends, family relationships, friendships, all of that. And I think all three of these collections deserve to be on your bookshelves because they are that good. You're not gonna find anything like them. So buy them. So I should say the names of them. So there's Don't Call Us Dead and Homie, which I think is my favorite out of all three, and then Bluff, which is their newest poetry collection. So good. So such important literature. And then moving on to literary fiction. Yes, literary fiction. I have The Humans by, actually, I forgot a poetry. Hold on. Last poetry collection. So I also gave Felon by Reginald Dwayne Betts a 5-star, and this collection is about the effects of incarceration, and it canvases a wide range of emotions and experiences through homelessness, underemployment, love, drug abuse, domestic violence, fatherhood, and grace, and in doing so creates a travelogue for an imagined life. This was such a beautiful collection. I especially love these. There's like these blackout poems of court documents, or are they court documents? Something like court documents. Yeah, they are. They're court documents, and the blackouts really just emphasize the language used to describe people who the world labels as criminals. So it is the world is shaking. Oh my gosh. Yeah, so the collection is just a wonderful piece of poetry, and I think it's a definite must read if you're into poetry. And if you're not, I always say that for me, if poetry is hard for you to get into, I think the place to start is reading poetry by people who have similarities to you, whether that be racial or similar identity or experiences or regional similarities. I think that's like the easiest way to get into poetry, and that's how I've become so into poetry, because I started to pick up poetry collections by Black authors and authors of color. And once I started to do that, getting into poetry became a lot easier. But this is a definite poetry collection, along with the Nesmith's poetry, that you should be reading. Next, we have literary fiction. So we have The Humans by Matt Haig, which is a story about, well, I don't want to spoil it. I don't know what is a spoiler, so I'll just read the back. So The Humans is a rollicking novel about math and murder, poetry and peanut butter, and casts a sharp eye on the triumphs and foibles of our weird and wonderful species. That doesn't really tell you anything at all. So I'll just say that on Earth, there is a mathematician, and he has had a breakthrough. And there is an alien civilization who keeps tracks of these kinds of breakthroughs, because these breakthroughs could lead to problems for their own civilization. So they keep track of it, and they send people to Earth to handle business. And I just thought that this was a really fun read. I found that I really like books where the main character sort of, isn't how a human is expected to be. I mean, obviously he's an alien, but they're not like how humans, they're not gonna read how a typical person telling a story reads. And that's just fun, seeing like the world through new lenses, and also just watching someone gain humanity was just really fun to read about. So I really enjoyed this. Next, I have The Housekeeper and the Professor by Yoko Ogawa, and this is another book about a math professor. So he is a brilliant math professor with a peculiar problem. Ever since a traumatic head injury, he has lived with only 80 minutes of short-term memory. She is an astute young housekeeper with a 10-year-old son who is hired to care for him. And every morning, as the professor and the housekeeper are introduced to each other anew, a strange and beautiful relationship blossoms between them. This was just a really heartwarming story. It was heartwarming and heartbreaking at the same time. And it's a very slow kind of read. Like, this is a read where maybe you're reading it like a chapter at a time every night. You're reading it with tea. You're reading it on your porch and early in the morning, and the sun is just coming up and it's quiet. Or you're reading it at night and you're in your bed and you're very comfortable and warm and you feel good. And that's the kind of read this book is. It's very slow moving. Not like pace wise, but like, I mean, I guess maybe, but like slow moving, and just like, it's very slice of life. It's very slice of life, but it's very beautiful. And the relationship between the housekeeper and her son and the professor is just, you don't get it a lot, I think, in fiction, because it's just it's weird to say, but it's just very human. And I think Yoko Ogawa does human so well. Her and Matt Haig, they both do human so well, even though that's a book about, the Matt Haig book is about an alien. They just do humans so well. So I really, really enjoyed this. Definite worth buying and picking up or checking out at your library. Definite worth reading. Then I have Grief is the Thing with Feathers by Max Porter, and this was a weird one. The book is about this father and his, I think, is it 2 sons? Yeah, a father and his 2 sons, and recently his wife and their mother has passed away, and they're really just going through grief, and in that grief, this crow appears. In this moment of violent despair, they are visited by Crow, antagonistic trickster, gold protector, therapist, and babysitter. Yeah, that's as weird as it sounds. And it was weird. And maybe sometimes even hard to like understand. And I think it's sort of told in this prose poetry kind of way. Maybe this would be described as in verse, but so it's described as part novella, part polyphonic fable, part essay on grief. And I think that polyphonic fable, that's accurate. Because reading this, I think to experience this book best is to listen to it on audio while reading. That's, I think, the best way to experience this, because when it says polyphonic, the sound, reading it, you need to hear the sounds that are being made. Because sound is such a big part of this. You have to listen to it on audio while reading to really get the full effect of what's happening on the page. But seeing this family explore grief, and just like, honestly, the writing in here is really beautiful. It's very poetic. Like, for instance, we have this line, "I lie about how you die, I whispered to mom. I would do the same," she whispered back. Like, oh my gosh, that's so beautiful. Let's see. And then at one point, I think this is like a flashback to the mom. She says, "You remind me of everything I have ever been interested in." Is that not love? Is that not love? "We will never fight again. Our lovely, quick, template-ready arguments, our delicate cross-stitch of bickers. The house becomes a physical encyclopedia of no longer hers." Come on. Amazing writing. Like, it will tear at your heart. It really will. It is really beautiful. And then finally, we have Blackouts by Justin Torres. This is one of, I think, my most recent 5 stars. Let's see. Out in the desert, in a place called the Palace, a young man tends to a dying soul. someone he once knew briefly but who has haunted the edges of his life. Juan Gay, playful raconteur, child lost and found and lost, guardian of the institutionalized, Juan has a project to pass along, one built around a true artifact of a book, Sex Variants, a study of homosexual patterns, and its devastating history. This book contains accounts collected in the early 20th century from queer subjects by a queer researcher, Jane Gay, whose groundbreaking work was then co-opted by a committee, her name buried. The voices of these subjects have been filtered, muted, but it's possible to hear them from within and beyond the text, which, in Juan's tattered volumes, has been redacted with black marker on nearly every page. As Juan waits for his end, he and the narrator recount for each other moments of joy and oblivion. They resurrect loves, lives, mothers, fathers, minor heroes. In telling their own stories and the story of the book, they resist the ravages of memory and time. The past is with us, beside us, ahead of us. What are we to create from its gaps and erasures? Yeah, that was a lot, but like, I don't think I could have described the book to you. Like, I really don't think I could have described the book to you besides reading out that very long summary. But this book is mixed media, and like it said, it's full of erasures, and I think it pulls a lot from actual history. Well, yeah, it definitely pulls a lot from actual history, and imbuing these physical characters with that history. So this is some of what's in the book, a lot of mixed media, and it's a really great exploration of queer history, in my opinion. I can't say for anyone else, but for me, I learned a lot about queer history in this like one specific area through this book. And the writing in here is also just really well done. Like, for me, writing is a real big important part of giving a book a 5-star. Like, I could think there could be some things I don't like in a book, but if I think the writing is just like amazing, I'm gonna give it a 5-star. Like, I also really just liked the book, but the writing in here was so good that like I'm like, this is brilliant. This is a brilliant piece of work. It deserves a 5-star just from how good the book is. Like, this book and the short story collection by Brian Amakal-Scott, like, in this book, I think for some reason this book reads really slow. I don't think the pacing is actually slow. It's just like the book requires you to read it slowly, and I don't know how Justin Torres has managed to do that so subtly, but you do read it slow. And I think for my friend, that like brought down her rating, but for me, I was like, I can't give this lower than a 5 stars because of just how smart it is, how thorough the research is, and also just on the line level, how good it is. Just like, to give you a couple like lines, I remember feeling plagued by an unbearable need for both intimacy and estrangement, for the queerness of touch. Mostly yeah, that just goes back into the plot, but she never barked because she couldn't. She had been bred not to bark, but barks lived inside her. I read them in her face and the way she opened her mouth and pulsed her vocal cords. Like, come on. I just like all the lines in here. I've underlined so much throughout this book because just like on the line level, Torres is brilliant. And yeah, that's all I can say about that. Okay, so those are my 5 stars for the year. It's been really fun to do this Bookmas challenge. I've only had this channel up since November 1st, so doing 12 videos in a row so early in this channel's life has been a crazy experience, but I think a good experience overall. So thank you for being here, and if you watch these videos, thank you for watching them, and thank you for joining me on this last Bookmas day, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.